Hey guys, tonight we travel far from the streets and stone of Babylon in Europe, and instead find ourselves beneath the vast sky of ancient India, where incense coils through courtyards, and the soft echo of temple bells marks the passing of time. You feel the warm night air on your skin, and you hear the faint splash of water from stone fountains, mingling with the scent of sandalwood and jasmine. This is not just a setting for prayers, it is the world in which the Kama Sutra was born. And before you panic, no, you probably wouldn't survive 5 minutes in this society of ritual, duty, and secret expectation. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you are listening from and what time it is for you right now. I love seeing how far these sleepy history stories travel across the world. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You begin by stepping into a small library filled with palm leaf manuscripts, each carefully tied with string. Kama Sutra, whispered today as a book of sensual secrets, sits here as one text among many, its surface covered in scripts that feel more like a hymn than a handbook. You run your fingers across the etchings, tracing words that promise not scandal but philosophy, guidance, and stories that weave human love into the larger tapestry of Dharma, the cosmic order of things. Historians still argue whether the Kama Sutra was ever meant to be just about intimacy. Some claim it was a practical manual, others a piece of poetry. Still others believe it was a coded scripture, wrapping truths of social order inside tales of longing. Tonight, you follow the text not as a voyeur, but as a dreamer, listening for the myths that cling to its pages. You imagine a scholar, centuries ago, seated cross-legged by oil lamp, unrolling a fragile page. He writes of Kama, the god of desire, whose bow is strung not with string, but with humming bees, whose arrows are tipped with blossoms of mango, jasmine, and lotus. Each arrow stirs not only the body but the soul, awakening joy, longing, and sometimes sorrow. One arrow can turn strangers into lovers. Another can make the most disciplined sage lose composure. You smile faintly at the thought. Apparently no one, not even holy men, was immune to a well-aimed flower. The god Kama, however, is not invincible. You hear the hushed story of his encounter with Shiva, the great ascetic. When Kama dares to fire his arrow of love at the meditating god, Shiva opens his third eye and burns Kama to ash. And yet, love does not die. It lingers invisible but stronger, flowing through the world even without its godly body. This paradox that desire can be destroyed and yet remain eternal is one of the myths that shadows every page of the Kama Sutra. You picture lovers in ancient courtyards, recalling Kama as they meet by moonlight, whispering prayers before they dare to touch. The myth gives meaning to their longing. It makes their union not only personal, but cosmic. And as you lean against the stone wall, you sense how different this is from the common image of the Kama Sutra. It is less about poses on parchment, and more about stories that frame intimacy as sacred, fragile, and necessary. A palm leaf rustles as you turn the page. It speaks of not only love between man and woman, but also friendship, duty to one's family, and the subtle art of balancing pleasure with virtue. These are the forgotten parts, the myths buried beneath centuries of selective retelling. You let the words wash over you, their rhythm slower than your breath, their tone lulling you deeper into the quiet. The lamp flickers, shadows ripple, and the sound of a night bird calls from beyond the temple walls. The air thickens with smoke, but your body feels lighter, carried by the gentle cadence of myth. You close your eyes briefly, and you realize that in this world, love is never just love. It is ritual, story, and philosophy intertwined. And as the night drapes its cloak around you, you are ready to follow the next myth. Deeper into the text, deeper into the dream. The night seems to press closer as you lean over the manuscript, and suddenly you find yourself standing not in a library, but in a garden. The air is heavy with the perfume of blooming jasmine and mango blossoms, and the distant hum of bees fills the stillness. You realize this is not an ordinary garden, it is the domain of Kama himself, the god of desire. His presence here is not announced with thunder or fire, but with the subtle rustle of leaves, the tickle of fragrance, and the invisible pull that makes your heart beat just a touch faster. Kama appears in your mind's eye, not as a fearsome deity, but as a figure crowned with flowers, holding a bow-strung not with sinew, but with buzzing bees. In his quiver rest arrows tipped with blossoms, jasmine to stir longing, lotus to awaken tenderness, mango to inflame passion, and blue lily to weave dreams. You almost laugh softly at the idea. Imagine an archer armed with flowers. And yet you can feel it, the truth tucked in myth. It is never the iron arrow that wounds most deeply, but the invisible pang of desire. Historians still argue whether Kama was always a god, or whether he began as a personification of human yearning, later elevated into divinity. Some say his myth grew to explain the inexplicable pull between people. Others believe he was woven into the fabric of Vedic ritual from the very start. But to you, wandering this garden in the hush of night, such debates dissolve. What matters is the feeling, a reminder that desire has always been both playful and perilous. You picture Kama drawing his bow, a soft smile on his lips. The bees hum as the string tightens, and then thrum the arrow looses. Flies silently, no sharper than a petal drifting on the wind. Yet when it strikes, it ignites. A sage deep in meditation finds his thoughts drifting, distracted by visions he cannot banish. A queen standing at her balcony feels her breath quicken as she gazes at the stars. A shepherd resting in the grass finds his heart leap at the sight of another's smile. Each story, each strike, is less about conquest than about awakening. And yet Kama's story is shadowed by loss. The tale of Shiva and the burning of desire returns to you now, the image vivid in your mind. Shiva, deep in meditation, seeks to transcend all attachments, all illusions. But when Kama dares to aim his arrow at him, the god opens his third eye, unleashing a beam of fire that reduces Kama to ash. You pause, feeling the weight of the silence that follows. Desire in that moment seems obliterated. The world shudders in its absence, lovers left without a guide. But the myth refuses to end in despair. From the ashes, desire lingers. Kama is said to become a bodiless, invisible yet eternal. You smile faintly, because isn't that just like longing? You can hide it, you can deny it, you can try to burn it away. But it slips back in, without a body, without a form, living in glances, sighs, and secret thoughts. The garden shimmers again in your imagination. You hear laughter perhaps. Kama's own, playful and knowing. The god may be gone in form, but in essence, he is everywhere. Every time someone blushes unexpectedly, every time someone sighs at the memory of a touch, every time someone's heart races for no reason, that is Kama's invisible arrow, reminding humanity that desire is as old as the stars. You exhale slowly, the night air cool on your skin. In this world, passion is not vulgar nor shameful. It is sacred and cosmic, an energy that binds people not only to one another, but to the order of the universe. And though scholars may argue whether the Kama Sutra was a handbook or a hymn, here, in the hush of this imagined garden, you understand. Its heart is myth, and its myth is desire itself. You step back from the blossoms, their fragrance still clinging to your breath, their sweetness heavy in your chest. The garden fades, but the hum of bees lingers, buzzing softly like the echo of an arrow released long ago, still finding its mark in the present moment. The sound of the bees fades into silence. And when you open your eyes again, you are seated cross-legged on a stone floor, a palm leaf manuscript resting in your lap. The words etched across its surface seem to shimmer, not with scandal, but with an almost surprising gentleness. This is the part most people forget. The Kama Sutra is not only about lovers and hidden chambers, but about friendships, duties, and the delicate balance of life. You trace the lines slowly, and what unfolds is not erotic theater, but a philosophy of being human. You read passages that speak of Mitra friendship. It's the first bond that shapes all others. The text lists the qualities of a true friend: loyalty, patience, the ability to listen without judgment. You can almost smile at how practical it feels, like advice you might find in a modern self-help book. A true friend, the text suggests, is as essential as a lover, perhaps more so. For friendship weathers where desire sometimes falters. You picture two men in an ancient Indian marketplace, laughing over cups of spiced milk, and realize that even in a book famous for intimacy, friendship is given sacred space. Historians still argue whether these sections were original or added later, stitched in to make the Kama Sutra more than a manual of pleasure. Some claim the emphasis on social bonds reflects India's caste and kinship structures, where relationships were the glue of society. Suggests the text was always meant to be encyclopedic, covering the full range of human connection. You let the debate drift by like smoke. To you, the words feel whole, belonging, as if the ancient author knew life cannot be divided neatly into compartments of love, duty, and play. Your eyes fall on another section, Dharma duty. Here the Kama Sutra instructs not only on how to love, but how to live within one's role. A husband's duty to protect, a wife's duty to manage the household, a lover's duty to remain discreet. You pause at that last one, yes, discretion. Even in antiquity, secrets mattered. You chuckle softly, imagining the author leaning in, whispering, "Passion is fine, but for heaven's sake, don't be careless." It seems even 2,000 years ago, gossip was a risk. And then, most surprising of all, you find advice on the cultivation of the self. How to sing, how to paint, how to write poems, how to play music. The Kama Sutra insists that to love well, one must live well. That beauty in art, music, and conversation makes intimacy deeper. It is as if the text says, desire without culture is fleeting, but desire shaped by creativity becomes immortal. You tilt your head back, picturing courtyards where lovers sing verses to one another by lamplight, or paint flowers as offerings before they embrace. The manuscript feels alive in your hands. Each line reminds you that while the world may remember Kama Sutra for its illustrations, the real body of the text is in these quieter lessons. Friendship, duty, refinement, they are threads woven into desire, binding it to the larger loom of human life. Outside the stone chamber, you hear the soft rustle of leaves. A night wind carries the smell of sandalwood again, and in it you hear an echo of a scholar's voice. Centuries past, do not think this book is only about passion. It is a mirror of life itself, you smile. Because here, in the stillness, the forgotten myths rise again. Not only myths of gods with arrows, but myths of ordinary people, bound together by trust, responsibility, art. The lamp flickers as if agreeing, and you let your eyelids lower. The warmth of the room, the rhythm of the words, the sense that love is larger than any one act, all of it folds around you like a blanket. You exhale, long and slow, and prepare to step deeper into the text, where duty gives way once again to ritual and story. Word count, 1091. The manuscript shimmers again, and suddenly you are standing at the edge of a courtyard lit by torches. Garlands of marigolds hang across carved doorways, and the air is heavy with the sound of drums and flutes. A wedding is about to begin. You shift closer, blending with the crowd. And for the first time, you see how the Kama Sutra, its forgotten lessons extend beyond intimacy into the rituals of union itself. The bride walks slowly, her sari woven with threads of gold, her eyes lowered beneath the shimmer of jewels. Beside her, the groom looks nervous, tugging at his embroidered robe. You smile faintly as, even 2,000 years ago, grooms were awkward. Their hands are joined beneath a canopy of cloth, priests murmuring hymns to Agni, the fire god, who bears witness to their vows. The flames crackle as if leaning in to listen. You feel the heat against your face, the sacred glow bathing the couple in light. Historians still argue whether the Kama Sutra described these rituals as prescription or observation. Did it tell people what they should do, or record what they already practiced? Some scholars say it was descriptive, a window into real marriages of the elite. Others insist it was aspirational, setting standards that many could never fully meet. You imagine the truth is somewhere between, ritual as both record and dream. The priest ties the ends of the bride's sari to the groom's robe, a knot called sinjor that binds their fates together. They circle the fire 7 times, each step symbolizing a vow. Nourishment, strength, prosperity, happiness, children, harmony, and eternal friendship. You count the circles in your mind, and with each one you feel the rhythm of life itself, an ancient choreography repeated across generations. And then comes the whisper of secrecy. The couple is led to a small chamber, draped with flowers and perfumed with incense. The door closes, and the crowd disperses, leaving only the sound of distant music. You stand at the threshold, not intruding, but sensing the weight of this moment. Where ritual ends, intimacy begins. It is here the Kama Sutra shifts from ceremony to story, guiding not only the union of bodies, but the blending of souls. You think of how often modern ears hear only the echo of scandal in this text, forgetting that its heart beats within these rituals. The book is less about adventurous postures than about preparing to people to share a life through vows. Through duty, through pleasure shaped by respect, you feel the truth settle into you like warm oil on the skin. Love in this world is never careless. It is deliberate, structured, even sacred. A child's laughter rings out in the courtyard, reminding you that marriage was never just about two individuals. It was about families, lineages, communities. The Kama Sutra describes roles and expectations not to cage love, but to sustain it within the larger web of society. You can almost hear the author's voice insisting, "This is how love survives, woven into ritual, blessed by fire, protected by community." The torches burn lower now, flickering in the night breeze. The crowd has vanished, the music faded, but the knot in the couple's garments remains strong, unbroken. You linger in the quiet, imagining how many such knots have been tied, how many fires circled, how many vows whispered. The thought is soothing, a reminder that even in ancient complexity, the core was simple. Two lives choosing to walk together. You take a slow breath, the scent of marigolds still thick in the air, and as you step back into the silence, you realize that the Kama Sutra's forgotten myths are not only about gods with arrows, but about ordinary men and women bound in ritual love and the steady rhythm of life. The courtyard fades, its torches dimming, and now you find yourself under another sky. This time along the shores of the Aegean Sea, the stars glitter overhead, and the soft lap of waves replaces the beat of Indian drums. You realize the thread of love and desire does not belong to India alone. It stretches across cultures, weaving myths together. And here in Greece, you encounter Eros and Aphrodite, counterparts to Kama and the stories you've just left behind. Eros appears in your mind as a winged youth, bow in hand, arrows gleaming in the moonlight. At first glance, he seems remarkably like Kama, an archer of desire, striking mortals and gods alike with sudden longing. Yet where Kama's arrows are tipped with blossoms and bees, Eros's are tipped with gold and lead. The golden arrow awakens love, the leaden one repels it. You smirk softly to yourself, imagining the awkward chaos, one arrow sparking passion, another ensuring rejection. Ancient myths, it seems, were not shy about humor. Historians still argue whether Eros was originally a primeval force and embodiment of creation itself, whether he grew later into the playful trickster god of desire. Some texts describe him as one of the first beings born from chaos, while others paint him as Aphrodite's mischievous son. You tilt your head, amused at the thought that even the scholars can quite agree on whether Eros was a cosmic principle or just a divine troublemaker. And then there is Aphrodite, goddess of love and beauty, rising from sea foam in a vision that still captivates the world. You watch her step lightly onto the shore, hair glistening, surrounded by doves. Where Kama is playful and unseen, Aphrodite is commanding and visible, her power unmistakable. Yet the myths of Aphrodite, like those of Kama, carry shadows affairs that scandalized Olympus. Jealousies that ignited wars, passions that consumed kings and heroes alike. You recall the story of Aphrodite and Ares, the goddess of love tangled with the god of war. Hephaestus, her husband, sets a trap, catching them in a net for all the gods to see. You almost chuckle at the image, the divine equivalent of a tabloid scandal, gossip in Olympus. But beneath the humor lies the same truth as in Kama's. Myth's desire is unpredictable, often uncontrollable, and always capable of reshaping lives. As you stand between these two worlds, India and Greece, you notice how similar their metaphors feel. A bow, arrows, desire as an invisible force, these motifs cross continents. You wonder if humanity has always needed to explain longing with symbols of flight and piercing, as if to say, love strikes from afar, sudden and sharp, and no one can prepare. The sea breeze cools your face, carrying the scent of salt. You lean against a stone pillar, watching the waves glitter. In your mind, Kama's floral arrows and Eros's golden shafts swirl together, indistinguishable. Two cultures, oceans apart, dream the same dream, that desires both gift and peril, a flame that warms and burns at once. A soft voice whispers through the wind, perhaps Aphrodite's, perhaps the echo of a forgotten Indian hymn. Love is sacred, love is dangerous, love is eternal. And you, drifting in this twilight between myths, feel lulled by the thought that no matter where you stand, under the Indian sky or the Greek moon, the same mysteries follow. The waves grow softer, the night deeper, and your breath slows, as if syncing with the eternal rhythm of human longing. The sea and stars dissolve, and once again you find yourself before the manuscripts. Their palm leaf pages breathing faintly in the torchlight. You run your hand across the etched lines, and the question rises quietly in your mind. What exactly was the Kama Sutra meant to be? Holy scripture to be recited with reverence, a coded manual of indulgence, or perhaps, as some scholars suggest, simply a collection of worldly advice wrapped in myth and metaphor. Historians still argue fiercely over this point. One camp insists the Kama Sutra should be read as Shastra, a treatise of knowledge, equal in seriousness to texts on law and statecraft. For them, it is a scripture, offering guidelines on love, duty, and refinement. Others dismiss this view, claiming it is more of a playful compilation, a witty record of social customs with passages meant as allegories rather than rules. You smile softly to yourself at the thought. Maybe the truth is somewhere in the middle. A book that teaches by laughing with you, not preaching at you. You picture an ancient scholar, sitting under the light of an oil lamp, pen in hand, shaking his head at the solemnity of later interpreters. Perhaps he intended his work to be practical and poetic at once. Here is how people live, he might have thought. Here is how they love, how they quarrel, how they dream. It was not scandal, but observation, stitched together with wit. You chuckle, imagine writing advice about discreet romance, only to be remembered millennia later as the world's most famous how-to manual. And yet, there are moments in the text where the tone shifts, where you feel the weight of sacred rhythm. Verses that read like hymns, cadences that echo chants heard in temples. Desire described not as sin, but as a cosmic force, one of the three pursuits of life: dharma, duty, artha, prosperity, and pleasure. In those passages, the Kama Sutra feels less like a manual and more like scripture, a way of balancing the human with the divine. You lean back, exhaling slowly. Isn't that the paradox? That the same book could be read by a scholar as philosophy, by a lover as guidance, by a poet as metaphor. The Kama Sutra holds mirrors to whoever dares to look. To the priest, it reflects ritual. To the young, it offers thrill. To the weary, it offers rest. Your mind drifts to a classroom centuries later where British translators pore over the text, blushing and whispering. To them, it is scandalous, exotic, a window into a world they cannot understand. You shake your head gently, amused at how context shifts meaning. To the ancients, it was ordinary. To the colonials, it was taboo. To us, it is a curiosity that somehow still carries a whisper of truth. The manuscript seems to sigh in your hands. The debate lingers, sacred text or playful allegory, but you feel a calm certainty. Perhaps it does not matter. What matters is that the words endured, carrying not only instruction, but imagination. A testament to how people once sought to live fully, to love without shame, to weave pleasure into the tapestry of duty and faith. The torch sputters, shadows sway, and you smile faintly, letting the argument slip into the background like a conversation overheard and forgotten. What remains is not controversy, but cadence, the steady lull of history's voice, drawing you further into sleep. The debate of scholars fades like a distant murmur, and now you feel the cool flagstones beneath your feet as night deepens. You are no longer in a chamber of manuscripts, but in a temple courtyard of ancient India, bathed in moonlight. Oil lamps flicker along carved stone ledges, their small flames trembling in the breeze. The air is heavy with the perfume of sandalwood and the sharper edge of burning frankincense. the smoke curling upward in lazy spirals. You pause, breathing it in, the scent lulling your body into a slower rhythm. A faint sound drifts through the night, the pluck of a vina string, its note quivering, lingering, dissolving. A flute follows, its tone high and plaintive, weaving through the spaces between lamp flames. Soon the beat of a small drum joins, soft and steady, like the rhythm of a resting heart. The music is not for celebration but for serenity, filling the courtyard with a soundscape that feels older than stone. You close your eyes, letting the notes fall over you like cool water. In the shadows, figures move quietly. A priest places fresh blossoms before the deity's image, jasmine and marigold, their colors muted in the dim glow. A woman carries a brass bowl of water, sprinkling it across the floor in small arcs that glimmer like liquid silver. The courtyard becomes less a place of ritual spectacle and more a chamber of breathing, where the world slows and you are allowed to drift. Historians still argue whether such nocturnal rituals were common in every temple or reserved for special nights. Some claim these ceremonies happened only during festivals when pilgrims gathered in thousands. Others suggest that nightly devotion, quiet and continuous, was the heartbeat of temple life. To you, the distinction seems unimportant. What matters is the hush, the way the music and incense seem designed to cradle you into stillness. A stray dog curls in the corner, sighing as if lulled by the rhythm. Nearby, a young boy balances a tray of lamps, his steps careful, his face glowing in the warm light. You imagine the author of the Kama Sutra sitting somewhere here centuries ago, watching scenes like this, noting how desire was never separate from devotion, how love was always framed by ritual and art. You glance at the sky, where stars crowd together above the temple's high towers. The moon, a pale disk, rests just above the horizon, casting a silver sheen over the stone courtyard. You imagine lovers from the city slipping quietly through these gates after dusk, not to flaunt but to hide within the sacred space, their whispers mingling with chants, their gestures sanctified by incense. Love, in this world, is not a disruption, but part of the night's ceremony. A soft breeze brushes against your cheek, and you hear the faint rustle of palm leaves outside the temple wall. The night is deep, and yet it is not empty. It is alive with quiet tasks, gentle sounds, and hidden stories. You take another breath, the incense thick but soothing, and feel your eyelids grow heavier. The courtyard seems to fold around you, offering not answers but calm. The drum beat slows, the flute softens, and the night presses closer, as though urging you to rest in its arms. History does not speak loudly. It hums, it sighs. It rocks you gently until the edges of thought blur. And as you let yourself drift further, you understand why myths of love and ritual survive. They are less about memory than about rhythm. A lullaby carried across centuries. The courtyard fades, its lamps dimming. And now you find yourself standing in a quiet chamber, where a single manuscript lies open beneath the glow of an oil lamp. The pages whisper of a story, one that has traveled centuries, blurred between myth and memory. You lean closer. The characters carved into palm leaves seem to shimmer, and suddenly the room dissolves, carrying you into the heart of the tale. It is the story of a young king, whose palace towers above the river plain. By day he rules, weighed down by councils and disputes, but by night he walks alone in his gardens, restless. The Kama Sutra describes him not in scandal but in longing, for his life is bound by duty and yet undone by a heart that beats too quickly. One evening, as the moon climbs high, he hears music drifting from the temple beyond the walls, flutes and vina strings. Carried like perfume across the night air, drawn as if by invisible arrows, he follows. There, in the temple's inner court, he sees her, a dancer veiled but radiant, her anklets ringing softly as she moves. Her steps are not hurried, but measured, every turn like a verse, every gesture like a line of poetry. The text notes how her movements echo the teachings of Kama himself, grace not only as art, but as invitation. You feel your breath match the king's, slow and sharp, each inhale deepening his longing. Historians still argue whether this tale was based on a real ruler, or whether it was crafted as allegory, a warning. Perhaps about kings distracted from their duties, or a celebration of love's inevitability. Some claim it was originally a parable about balance, that even kings, burdened with responsibility, must bow to the laws of desire. Others whisper it was drawn from memory, an actual love story between a monarch and a temple dancer. You shrugged faintly, smiling. Does it matter? The story survives, not because of fact, but because of feeling. The king approaches her after the dance, his hands trembling despite his crown. He offers no decree, no command, but a garland of flowers. She accepts, lowering her eyes, and in that moment their union is sealed not by politics, not by ritual, but by silence. The text lingers here, describing how their nights unfolded not in excess, but in balance. Music, poetry, devotion, and yes, the intimacy that myths tend to veil. Together, they embody the truth. The Kama Sutra whispers again and again that love is not chaos, but a practiced art shaped by patience, by rhythm, by respect. You imagine them in their hidden chamber, the lamp burning low, their words quieter than the wind. Outside, the city sleeps, the guards patrol, the priests chant. Inside, time dissolves. Two people, separated by birth and bound by duty, find a pocket of eternity in each other's presence. You feel the calm in that image, as though even history pauses to let them rest. And yet, like all stories, this one holds shadows. The king cannot remain forever in secrecy. At dawn, he must return to the court, his robe heavy, his crown cold. The dancer must resume her role, offering songs and steps to the temple. But each night, the lamp burns again. The garland is exchanged, and desire renews itself. In that cycle lies the myth's heart. Longing is not erased by duty, it weaves itself around it, quietly, stubbornly, eternally. You step back, the chamber forming again around you. The manuscript lies open, its script steady, unhurried. You close your eyes and realize the story is less about a king and a dancer than about the way all longing feels sudden, fragile, necessary. And as the oil lamp flickers, you let the scene dissolve, carrying with it the rhythm of footsteps, the sigh of music, the scent of flowers exchanged in silence. The lamp's flame softens, and once more, the chamber dissolves, carrying you across landscapes and centuries. You feel the warm breeze of the Indian plains fade into the cool, salt air of the Mediterranean, then into the dry winds of the Near East. It is as though the myths of the Kama Sutra refuse to remain confined to one place. Echoing and reflecting in the stories of other civilizations, you realize that desire, love, and ritual were not merely Indian concerns. They were threads woven through the entire fabric of humanity. You first glimpse a banquet hall in Athens, where philosophers recline on cushions, wine cups in hand. They speak not only of politics and geometry, but of eros love as a binding force, the madness that inspires poets and heroes. You chuckle softly, imagining Socrates, usually so stern, speaking of love as though it were the root of all wisdom. To the Greeks, desire could be noble, even divine, though it was often wrapped in tales of scandal and jealousy. In that sense, it mirrors the Kama Sutra's paradox. Desire is both lesson and laughter. Historians still argue whether these parallels arose through contact trade routes, carrying not only spices and silk, but also stories, or whether they emerged naturally, each culture inventing its own myths for the same universal longing. Some suggest the Hellenistic world influenced Indian texts, while others argue the reverse. You smile, leaning back in your imagination, content with the idea that love needs no passport. Next, you find yourself in a quiet courtyard of Mesopotamia, where clay tablets whisper of Inanna and Dumuzi. There, union is described not merely as passion, but as the very turning of the seasons. The goddess of love descending to the underworld, the shepherd god following. Their reunion ensuring the fertility of the land, the fragrance of incense, the rhythm of ritual chants. The quiet exchange of gifts, it feels remarkably close to the forgotten myths nestled in the Kama Sutra. You realize that in every culture, love was never just personal, it was cosmic, tethered to the rise of crops, the survival of kingdoms, the balance of the world. And then the scene shifts again, this time to China, where the classic of the plain girl whispers about harmony between yin and yang. Lovers are instructed not just in intimacy, but in breathing, in posture, in cultivating energy, so that union mirrors the balance of heaven and earth. You hear the soft echo of flutes, see the painted silk curtains, and think of how these teachings resemble the Kama Sutra's reminder that art, refinement, and ritual make love sacred. In every place you land, you notice a common thread. Desire is never portrayed as base or vulgar when framed by myth. It is elevated, given symbolism, bound to God's seasons or cosmic forces. What changes is the clothing, the names, the rituals, but the essence remains. A garland of marigolds in India, a dove in Greece, a lotus in China, pomegranate in Mesopotamia. Tokens of the same truth. The night air presses gently against you as these worlds fade and overlap. You feel as though you are walking a long corridor lined with doors, each one opening into a different culture. And behind each door, the same quiet rhythm of longing. Some call it Kama, others Eros, others Inanna's descent. But in the end, all are telling you, love is the oldest story we carry. The manuscript returns to your lap, heavy but familiar. You close your eyes. And the echoes of these cultures blur together into a lullaby, a chorus of ancient voices reminding you that no matter where you are born, the heart beats the same when struck by longing. The manuscript rests warm in your lap, its edges faintly fragrant with sandalwood, and as you lean closer, you notice the words shift, not in meaning, but in tone. The passages no longer feel like instructions or stories. They feel like metaphors. You realize that the Kama Sutra was never only about the body. It was about the way desire itself becomes a symbol for life's balance, a mirror for how to live. One line catches your eye. As the lotus opens in sunlight, so too does the heart in companionship. Pause, letting the image linger. The lotus is not just a flower, it is a metaphor for awakening, for purity, for the hidden beauty that blooms only in the right conditions. In the Kama Sutra, it is love that becomes the sunlight, coaxing the heart into full expression. You breathe slowly, the picture of a lotus floating on still water, easing into your mind like a lullaby. Historians still argue whether these metaphors were intentional philosophical devices or simply poetic flourishes. Some suggest the Kama Sutra was crafted with layers of meaning, each line holding a surface lesson for lovers and a deeper truth for thinkers. Others argue that we modern readers impose philosophy where the ancients saw only artful language. You smile faintly, knowing both can be true. Poetry always carries more than one face. Your eyes fall to another passage. Union is like the weaving of threads, fragile unless tended. You imagine a loom, threads pulled taut, hands working carefully. Desire, the passage insists, is not just pleasure, it is fabric, binding lives together. Fragile, but enduring when cared for. You chuckle softly, thinking how even 2,000 years ago people knew relationships require maintenance, not magic. Beyond metaphor, the text leans into cosmology. Desire, it claims, is one of the three pursuits of life dharma, artha, kama. It is not frivolous but fundamental, a part of the cosmic order. In this way, intimacy is elevated, no longer an indulgence, but a duty to the self, to the balance of existence. You picture a cosmic scale, one side weighted with duty, the other with desire, perfectly even. Without one, the other tilts into emptiness. The oil lamp flickers, shadows dancing across the page. You hear the echo of voices across centuries, priests chanting hymns, poets reciting verses, lovers whispering in courtyards. All are saying the same thing. Intimacy is never only physical. It is metaphor for growth, for trust, for the fragile beauty of being human. You realize that to read the Kama Sutra literally is to miss its softness, its insistence that the smallest gestures, a touch, a glance, a verse shared under moonlight, are as meaningful as grand rituals. You exhale, your breath slowing, as the metaphors fold around you like a blanket. The lotus, the loom, the balance of cosmic pursuits, G1, simple, each one vast. You feel your own heart ease, recognizing in these ancient words the same truths you carry today. Love is awakening. Desire is weaving. Intimacy is harmony. The lamp grows dim, and you let the imagery blur into drowsy shapes, comforting, steady. The metaphors do their quiet work, not only teaching, but soothing, reminding you that in every culture, in every age, love has been the most familiar language of all. The dim light of the oil lamp flickers once, twice, and when it steadies again, you find yourself not in an Indian temple, but in a study filled with leather-bound books and the smell of pipe smoke. It is the 19th century now, and across a polished wooden table lies a translated copy of the Kama Sutra. Its pages are freshly printed, bound in stiff covers, and yet it feels out of place here, like a lotus floating on foreign waters. The man who leans over it, Sir Richard Francis Burton, is both explorer and translator, and he looks more like a soldier than a scholar. You watch him with a mixture of curiosity and amusement, for he handles the text as though it were dynamite. His pen scratches across paper, carefully selecting words, sometimes blushing at passages, other times exaggerating them. You realize that this is how the Kama Sutra first traveled westward, not as a hymn of balance, but as an exotic curiosity, filtered through Victorian eyes. Historians still argue whether Burton and his circle faithfully represented the text or deliberately sensationalized it. Some say they sought to preserve its wisdom in the face of censorship. Others claim they exaggerated the erotic passages, ignoring the sections on friendship, duty, and refinement. You chuckle softly, perhaps they simply couldn't resist leaning into what would shock their society most. After all, scandal sells faster than philosophy. The Western world greeted the Kama Sutra with whispers and gasps. To some, it was forbidden fruit, a book to be hidden under the bed or locked in a drawer. To others, it was a passport into fantasies they dared not speak of aloud. You picture Victorian gentlemen, mustaches twitching, pretending to read it for research, while their wives peeked at the illustrations with a mix of shock and fascination. The book became, in the West, less a manual of balance and more a symbol of the exotic and the taboo. And yet, through this distortion, something survived. Even stripped of its context, the text carried a whisper of its original intent. That intimacy was not shameful, but worthy of study. That love deserved the same careful attention as law or art. For some readers, even in secrecy, this was liberating. Imagine a lonely woman in London, opening the book by candlelight, finding not scandal, but comfort words that told her desire was not sin but nature. Over time, the Kama Sutra was simplified further, reduced in popular imagination to illustrations of impossible poses. You sigh quietly, amused at how cultures flatten complexity into caricature. What was once philosophy became novelty, the metaphors forgotten, the hymns silenced, and yet, even through the veil of misinterpretation, the text endured. The manuscript in your lap feels heavier now, as though burdened by centuries of misunderstanding. But as you close your eyes, you sense a strange reassurance. Even in distortion, even in exile, the text still carried seeds of truth. It reminded people that desire could be spoken, that longing could be named. That alone was enough to let it survive, waiting for someone, perhaps to read it again, slowly, gently, in the way it was meant. The study dissolves, pipe smoke fading into sandalwood once more. You return to the stillness of the temple, the manuscript steady in your hands. The West may have misunderstood it, but here in the quiet, the original rhythm persists. The hum of balance, the hymn of love, the soft embrace of night. The faint haze of pipe smoke drifts away, and once again, you are surrounded by the dim glow of oil lamps and the musky perfume of incense. The manuscript rests gently in your hands. But now your mind wanders forward past dusty libraries and Victorian whispers, past centuries of distortion. You find yourself in the present, where modern seekers, scholars, and dreamers attempt to rediscover the Kama Sutra in its original rhythm. A small yoga studio flickers into view. The room is lined with soft mats, dim lanterns, and the gentle hum of a singing bowl. A teacher speaks in a calm voice, quoting from the Kama Sutra, but not the parts people expect. She does not recite a passage about physical union. Instead, she shares a verse about friendship, kindness, and the cultivation of art. Around her, listeners nod, some surprised, some relieved. You smile faintly, realizing that in this moment the text is no longer scandalous. It is guidance. Historians still argue whether modern readers can ever truly recapture the ancient spirit of the text. Some say it is impossible, that the cultural gap is too wide. Others believe that the heart of the Kama Sutra, the call for balance, refinement, and sacred intimacy, transcends time. Watching the teacher's words ripple across her students, you sense that the second view holds more weight. After all, the human heart has not changed so very much. You drift to another scene. A couple, sitting together not in a palace or temple, but in a quiet apartment. No incense burns, no priests chant, just a people on a couch, sharing the manuscript like a storybook. They laugh softly at some passages, their eyes widen at others, and when they pause, it is not for scandal, but for reflection. Imagine one says they cared this much about friendship and music, about laughter and trust. You feel warmth at that realization. Love, even today, is not only about passion, but about weaving lives together. The Kama Sutra in modern times becomes something of a mirror. To some, it still reflects curiosity, even novelty. To others, it is a bridge back to ancient wisdom, a reminder that intimacy was once celebrated as sacred. And to a few, it is a kind of lullaby, words that reassure rather than excite, words that invite reflection rather than frenzy. You lean back, letting this thought settle like a blanket over your shoulders. And there's another shift. Scholars now speak of Kama Sutra not as a sex manual, but as part of a family of texts about living well. They remind readers that the book is one of many sutras, alongside those about law, politics, and philosophy. Its subject is pleasure, yes, but also the art of life itself. The rediscovery lies not in poses, but in poetry, not in scandal, but in subtlety. You close your eyes, picturing the ancient author Vatsyayana, watching from some corner of time. Perhaps he smiles faintly, amused that his work was once misread, then relieved that at last, people are beginning to listen again. His words, written in a different world, have found a new audience, ready to hear not just instructions, but intentions. The manuscript warms in your lap, its script glowing faintly like embers. The modern world hums, just outside traffic screens. Voices but, in this moment. The text bridges centuries. It whispers the same truths. Cultivate kindness, honor friendship, embrace art, and treat desire as sacred. The rediscovery is not in the pages themselves, but in how gently you let them guide you. You exhale slowly, letting the present dissolve back into the timeless rhythm of the night. The manuscript waits, its myths not forgotten, but reawakened. And you feel ready to follow it further, deeper into the dream. The present dissolves softly like mist under moonlight. And when you open your eyes again, you are standing in yet another night. This one is darker, more mysterious, the air thick with anticipation. You find yourself outside a temple that looms tall, its ziggurat-like steps rising toward the stars. Torches flicker at the base, their glow faint against the mass of stone. Beyond the gates, you hear the distant beat of a drum, slow, deliberate, echoing like a heartbeat across the ground. You step inside. The courtyard is hushed, shadows stretching long beneath the firelight. A procession of women, veiled and robed, carries bowls of flowers and pitchers of water. They move in silence, their anklets chiming softly with each step. You trail behind them, your breath slowing, as though the rhythm of the drums is already seeping into your chest. The scene is not one of spectacle, but of secrecy.
No crowds, no cheering.
A lonely whispered chants, the kind that rise just loud enough to stir the air, but not enough to break the night. You feel your body respond to the hush, shoulders loosening, heartbeat falling into step with the drum. Historians still argue whether such midnight rituals described in ancient texts were literal ceremonies, or symbolic visions meant to represent the union of divine and human. Some suggest they were actual temple practices where participants enacted myths through movement and song. Others believe they were metaphors, coded ways of teaching about balance, desire, and devotion. You smile faintly, realizing that mystery is often stronger than certainty. Inside the temple, incense burns, thick and sweet, and its smoke clings to your skin. You hear the soft murmur of voices, priests reciting verses that sound less like commands and more like lullabies. A woman places a bowl of marigolds on the altar, petals spilling like fragments of sunlight into the shadows. Another sprinkles rosewater, the scent mingling with the incense until the air feels heavy with sweetness. Then comes the moment of stillness. The drum halts, the chanting ceases, and the temple holds its breath. You feel the hush press against your ears. So deep it seems the stars themselves are listening. In that silence, you sense the essence of what the Kama Sutra was trying to convey. That intimacy, whether between lovers or between human and divine, is not noise but quiet. It is the space between heartbeats, the pause between notes, the silence that carries meaning. Single note of the vina plucks the silence open again. Slowly, gently, the ritual resumes, steps measured, words whispered, fire flickering low. You let yourself sway slightly, as though rocked by the rhythm. The night no longer feels heavy, feels soft, enveloping you like a blanket. You realize that these rituals, whether real or imagined, serve the same purpose as your story tonight. They slow the body, soften the mind, draw the listener or participant to a state where thought dissolves and only rhythm remains. You smile quietly, understanding that history is not only about facts, but about the lullabies cultures sing too, themselves to endure the night. The drums fade again, the torches dim, and you feel the hush deepen. Your eyes close, and the temple becomes less stone and more dream. Its rituals less history and more whisper. You exhale, long and even, your body sinking into the rhythm of sleep that the ancients perhaps always intended. The hush of the temple lingers as you drift deeper into the dream. And when the air shifts again, it feels heavier, richer, like velvet draped over stone. You look around and realize you are no longer at the edge of the ritual, but standing in its very heart. The chamber is vast, its walls painted with faded frescoes of gods and lovers, its pillars carved with vines and birds that seem to move in the torchlight. The air hums, not with sound, but with a tension that feels alive, like the pause before thunder. A priest raises his hand, and the torches flare. The veiled women circle slowly, their garments catching the light, their steps weaving patterns across the floor. Each turn feels deliberate, symbolic, as though their movements are not for the eye, but for the unseen. You watch closely, and the scene begins to blur, in clarity, but in meaning. The dance seems at once earthly and divine, a shadow play of longing and surrender. Historians still argue whether such rituals, whispered in texts and hinted at in carvings, were actual ceremonies of the body or allegories for spiritual union. Some claim temples in ancient India staged them as living myths, dramatizing the bond between human and God. Others suggest they were metaphors, describing meditation and inner harmony in language of intimacy. You exhale slowly, amused by the irony. Whether fact or metaphor, the effect is the same. You feel lulled, drawn deeper into the rhythm of their mystery. The chamber grows warmer, heavy with incense. The drum returns, steady and low, joined by the hum of voices, rising and falling like waves. You sense that you are inside a story that folds upon itself, myth retold as ritual, a ritual remembered as philosophy, a philosophy disguised as poetry. It is, in essence, a Baroque painting come to life. Shadows deep, details endless, every figure caught between the earthly and the eternal. In one corner, a fresco shows Kama loosing his arrow of blossoms. In another, Shiva's third eye blazes with fire. Between them, a lotus blooms, its petals stretching toward the ceiling. You smile faintly here. Myth and metaphor do not compete. They blend, creating a tapestry that is as soothing as it is perplexing. The dancers slow, their steps becoming smaller, more intimate. One tilts her head, veil slipping slightly, her eyes catching the light. For a moment you feel she is looking at you, though you know she is gazing at eternity. Her hand hovers near her lips, as if holding a secret too delicate to speak aloud. You lean in, but no words come, only the soft sound of your own breath, blending with the drum. The climax is not loud. It is not spectacle. It is the realization that you are inside the very metaphor the Kama Sutra cherished. That union, whether physical or spiritual, is less about instruction and more about surrender. It is the art of letting rhythm take over, of letting ritual cradle you, of becoming part of a story larger than yourself. And then, as if on cue, the torches dim again. The dancers bow their heads, the priest lowers his hand, and silence folds back into the chamber. But the silence is not empty, it hums, filled with the echo of what just passed, as though the walls themselves are still singing. You take a long breath, the air warm, heavy, fragrant. Your body feels soft, your mind quieter than before. The ritual, whether real or imagined, has done its work. It has rocked you into stillness, lulled you into the gentlest edge of sleep. The chamber softens, its torches glowing like fading embers, and you feel the weight of the night settling over you. The dancers vanish into shadows, their anklets no longer ringing, their veils folding into silence. The manuscript closes gently in your lap, its pages now resting like a quiet heartbeat, steady but unhurried. You realize the journey has brought you from gardens of blossoms to temples of fire, from myths of gods to rituals of mortals, yet all along it has been about the same thing. The rhythm of longing woven into the fabric of human life. Historians still argue whether these rituals and stories were literal or metaphorical, sacred or playful, prescriptive or descriptive. But as you sit here in the soft glow, you understand that perhaps the debates were never the point. What survives is the feeling that intimacy was once framed as balance, that love was once honored as a cosmic principle, that stories and ceremonies alike were meant not only to instruct, but to soothe. The courtyard outside the temple is silent now, the lamps guttering low. You step into the night air, cooler than before, and look up at the stars scattered across the sky. They shine without hurry, eternal and indifferent, yet somehow comforting. You let your breath match their rhythms, slow, even steady. You smile faintly, remembering Kama's, arrows tipped with flowers, Eros's golden shafts, Aphrodite's laughter, Inanna's descent, myths scattered across continents, yet all humming the same tune. That love is fragile and powerful, playful and sacred, fleeting and eternal. The thought drapes itself around you like a blanket, softening your mind, loosening your body. The drumbeat you heard earlier fades now into the rhythm of your own breath. The smoke of incense dissolves into the cool air. The manuscript rests, silent, patient, as though waiting for another night, another reader, another dreamer. You take one last deep breath, the air thick with the residue of ritual, and let it out slowly. The night folds in, the story hums low, and you feel yourself slipping into the gentlest current of sleep. And now, as the night grows softer, let yourself drift even further. The sounds of the temple fade, the torches gutter out, and what remains is only the steady rhythm of your breath, moving in and out like waves on a quiet shore. Each inhale carries with it the faint trace of sandalwood. Each exhale releases whatever weight you've been carrying through the day. You are no longer in a chamber, no longer among dancers or priests. You are floating, gently, in a space between dream and waking. The stars above blur into a soft glow, and even they seem to dim, as though the universe itself is easing you into rest. The body grows lighter, softer, as if wrapped in a blanket spun from centuries of stories, myths, and quiet songs. Every story you've heard tonight, of Kama, of rituals, of forgotten myths, is no longer something to study or analyze. They're simply echoes, fading gently, leaving only calm behind. The debates of scholars, the arguments of centuries, dissolve into silence. What remains is simplicity, the hush of night, the comfort of rhythm, the reassurance that love and longing have always been part of the human story. So, let your eyes grow heavy, let your body soften into the bed beneath you. Imagine the lamp dimming, the temple fading, the world itself sighing into stillness. You are safe here, carried gently by history's quiet hand. The night will hold you, the rhythm will soothe you, and sleep will come as naturally as breath. Sweet dreams.